Hello to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us today. It is the first edition of the informative, of the interactive program. It is Global Insight on the Pan-African Television for you, Media Africa. And today we want to take focus on the latest development in West Africa, but we're going to go into a deeper understanding, looking at the changing dynamics that have been occurring, especially or patterning of the West African regional bloc ECOWAS. You know, ECOWAS once a revert regional bloc in Africa in all areas over the years have been plunged into a state of uncertainty. The controversies of ECOWAS seemingly started in 2019 when President Alassane Ouattara of La Côte d'Ivoire announced the use of the currency in ECOWAS, an announcement that took especially English-speaking members of the bloc by surprise. It, however, met resistance from within and beyond, the start point of major changing dynamics in ECOWAS, which have dragged till date with the political impasse rocking countries, rocking the West African region, and has eventually led to Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso quitting the bloc. The 21st century is marked by heightened multilateralism, and major world players are redefining and wanting to map their sphere of influence around Africa, thus putting Africa on the spotlight. But how can Africa handle or tackle these to meet continental objectives? The revolution across the continent is real and is very visible in Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and elsewhere, as leaders have stood against further infiltration by foreign powers, defending their sovereignty in every front. Unfortunately, ECOWAS seems to be that one regional bloc that has allowed the third party to have a voice, derailing it from its guiding principles of political stability, regional integration, among others. Thus, on today's edition of Global Insights on For You Media Africa, we want to engage in a thought-provoking and discursive program to critically analyze the dynamics in ECOWAS and how this has affected it, especially with the recent decision by Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso to leave the West African regional bloc. Thank you once more. If you are just tuning in, you are welcome to Global Insight on For You Media Africa. Of course, I won't be doing this alone. I have a panel of great experts to give us a greater insight on the dynamics surrounding ECOWAS and the recent development where we see these Sahelian nations, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, quitting the regional bloc, putting, of course, its credibility on the limelight. Are we talking about the fragility of ECOWAS? Are we talking about the geopolitical maneuvers around Africa? Are we talking about the economic implications of these? It should be noted that ECOWAS, or the West African regional bloc, has been facing challenges over the years, and we know the implications of this on the spirit of oneness as far as Africa is concerned. Thank you so much. Time for us to uncover the panel, and with pleasure I'll be taking you to Canada. Let's meet Dr. ENOAKU, who is joining in his capacity as Director of Center for Africa Development. Hello to you, Dr. ENOAKU. It's a pleasure having you this day on For You Media Africa.
Thank you, Clarice, and I want to say congratulations first for the new show. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and I wish you all the best. You are a brilliant journalist, and I know that you're going to be a great success. Thanks for having me, and I hope we're going to have a great discussion on what is happening on a beautiful continent of Africa and some of the challenges that they continue to face. So thanks for having me one more time, Clarice, and congrats.
Thank you so much, Dr. ENOAKU. It's always a pleasure having you share your insight on topical issues affecting not just the African continent, but we are looking at how the African continent can make its voice heard, especially at the international arena. It's always a pleasure to have this interactive and constructive discussion with you. And of course, let's head now to South Sudan. We have been joined by former Ghanaian Minister of State, who also doubles as MP for War Central and currently President of the African Parliamentarian Forum on Population and Development. Welcome to you, Honorable Dr. RASHIED PELPUO.
Thank you, Clarice. It's great meeting you again, and great also having all these wonderful panelists. I hope we are going to have a useful discussion on this area. Africa has faced a lot. ECOWAS is supposed to be a regime for West African countries to come together to look up to each to look after the welfare of each other and to look at the collective will of the people in relation to the charter. But today we are having challenges. I hope that discussions will bring out all these challenges and what we can do to resolve them.
Absolutely. That's why, of course, that's why For You Media is all here to ensure that we have not just discussions, but constructive discussions that would change or positively change the narratives across the African continent. We're going to write off with the preliminary questions, of course, looking at the decision by Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso to leave the embattled West African regional bloc, that is ECOWAS. I will kick off with you, Dr. RASHIED. Let's have a holistic understanding of the development in ECOWAS, and of course, how did you actually welcome the decision by these countries which have been at the forefront as far as political revolution is concerned in Africa?
So much, Clarice. ECOWAS, as we all know, is supposed to be an economic organization of the 16 or 15 West African countries who have come together determined to develop an economic policy that have a regional connotation and will have a direct influence on each other, depending on how economic policies are carried out. ECOWAS has existed all these years from the time of the Lagos Declaration. To date, we've had different phases of ECOWAS, one phase being a determination to have an economic unity, another phase being a military organization that can ensure stability in the various countries and to bring the respectability of Africans themselves solving their own problems. It's painful that after all these years of ECOWAS existence, we haven't been able to streamline this operation and to find 3 members of ECOWAS seeking to opt out of it. It tells a lot of stories. It tells a long story of an organization that hasn't reflected its direct impacts on the lives of people. Hopefully, what we are looking at is a transition that will perhaps come to a point where we can experience some change, which in the end can also be better.
Indeed.
Clarice, can you hear me?
Of course, I can hear you, Dr. RASHIED. I can hear you. Okay. You can write on, please.
Great. So essentially, it's this is a transition we have come to, a terrible transition where 3 founding members, all the 3 countries that have opted out of ECOWAS, were present day itself of the declaration with their presidents present. You know, I think only one country didn't have his president present. That was you know, what was the name? Okay, only one country didn't have their president present. Otherwise, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso were present in themselves with their presidents themselves. It shows that from the word go, they were very committed in the foundation of ECOWAS. They were committed to seeing it through. At a point when the military leaders of these countries are exiting, will tell a story of disappointment from them. And we are yet to understand fully what these disappointments are. But we know that these are revolutionaries. These are people who want to change the status quo. They have started, from their own colonial masters to say, we don't want to belong to the same colonial regime.
Absolutely.
Where you subject us to all the problems of exploitation still manifesting itself in present-day life.
Absolutely.
And so with such a radical stance, you can expect that the same group of people would also want to change ECOWAS so that, they can reflect themselves as truly independent states who want to change circumstances in their own country, who want to make sure they don't belong to the same regime that is oppressing them, and especially for them to be able to exist in freedom, to rule in freedom, coming from the military point of view, not necessarily by the will of the people. So it's a straightforward, determined change that these leaders want to bring upon ECOWAS and upon the world stage to which they belong.
Okay, I will come back to you subsequently, Dr. Rashida. Let's get the viewpoint of Dr. Alajer. Of course, as of the preamble, we noted about the dynamics of the changing dynamics in ECOWAS. So, in your perspective, Dr. Alajer ENOAKU, I want us to take a deeper understanding or a deeper look about the dynamics or the perspectives or the development that have characterized the regional bloc from the year 2019, like was underlined in the preamble, about the controversies coming from the adoption of the currency. And then today we're talking about the infiltration of the regional bloc by Western or foreign powers for the reasons which are best known to us. So in your own perspective, Dr. Alajer, how can you analyze the ongoing development, especially in the West African sub-region, regional bloc ECOWAS?
Clarice, thank you. I want to start by saying that this is not good news for Africa. At the point when the international community is looking for regional blocs that are going to stand toe-to-toe with regional blocs in the West or in the East, we are having disintegration of regional blocs within Africa. So it's not good news in any way, shape, or form. But the question is, who do you blame in these imbroglio? Who do you blame? Because if you look at what is happening in the ECOWAS region, it is an epitome of some of the failures that we are realizing with the governments in Africa. Clarice, can you hear me?
Sure, I can hear you right on, sir.
Good. Yeah. So ECOWAS leadership failed to observe and understand the times that they were existing in. It is true that when they signed that convention in Lagos, it was an economic forum, it was an economic group. But later on, due to several revisions, they now brought in interdependence, solidarity, cooperation, military alliance, non-aggression, regional balance, regional peace, human rights, and all this. They failed to see the times, to read the times. And it's unfortunately the things that we are seeing happen in Africa. Because all what they see is that it's a military coup. But they fail to understand and read the times, read the opinion polls, and read the aspiration of the people. What is it that the people of Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali want? Was it a junta that took power against the will of the people? Or was it a junta that took power in accordance with the desires of the people? Absolutely. That is the colossal failure of ECOWAS. Sure. Because when you are trying to implement policies, even if there are policies that have been agreed on within a regional body, you also look at what the population is aspiring for. These people in these countries have been yearning for some sort of liberation from their colonial masters. Absolutely. So the fact that military juntas took over power does not automatically mean that all the charter of ECOWAS need to be implemented without looking at the aspiration of the people. Indeed. That is where ECOWAS started failing. And it is such a strategy because, like I said from the beginning, at the time when we are looking for regional cooperation, regional blocks that will come together and in solidarity work together in order to present a common agenda on the international front, we are instead seeing this regional bloc disintegrating, and because of the lack of foresight from the leadership of ECOWAS, they allow that to go to a situation where we now have three of the founding members, because Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger were three of the founding members of this 15-member bloc. For them to withdraw themselves, the economic fallout, because the main anchor of ECOWAS is economic integration within those blocks, because the political integration and solidarity came later. The main agenda that they founded these regional bloc on was on economic equity and integration. That agenda itself is threatened right now. Because if you have these bigger power, in terms of size, because we know that the economic and political juggernaut of ECOWAS is Nigeria. But in terms of, geographical location, if you have Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali pulling out of it, you are having political risk, you are having security risk, you are having exposure to aggression. There's a lot of risk where ECOWAS is thrown into because of this decision. Okay. Before long, we heard about them talking about the creation of their own monetary policy, which means if they pull their own economic power from this bloc, you are going to have chaos in the economy. Sure. Even now, as we speak, the Naira, which is in a way pseudo-pet to the franc CFA because they are in this region, because the economic integration between these is so tight in such a way that when you go to currency exchange, there are some mechanism within that currency exchange that allow for this West African franc CFA to trade with the Naira, because the Naira is the juggernaut within that region. As we speak, Naira has crashed. The Naira has crashed. And one of the reasons it has crashed is because of this reckless decision by ECOWAS to forget about the economy, the well-being of the people, and go hard on Niger, go hard on Mali. Sanctions, punitive sanctions. It was so aggressive, so much that ECOWAS forget that the people who are bearing the brunt of the sanctions and whatever they are doing on Mali, Burkina Faso, are not even the government. They're the ordinary citizens that are bearing the brunt of those sanctions that they have made it on this country. So ECOWAS, what I mean by they, completely lost track of what they were supposed to do. And these are the consequences of what we are seeing. So it is regrettable that we are saying this today, but I lay this at the foot of ECOWAS, because this is not the route they were supposed to take, to go so hard on these countries. They forgot about the aspirations of the people. They did not see, or they failed to see the aspiration of the people. And if you look at the three things that these three countries are accusing them of, in all fairness, you understand, you would agree that they have a point. Number one, they said ECOWAS is now manipulated by Western powers. Absolutely. Is there any evidence to prove that? I would say yes. There's evidence to prove that what they are saying is true. Absolutely. Because if you look at ECOWAS and what they are doing now, they seems to be taking their cues from Western powers. Number two, they accuse ECOWAS of not helping them to fight the jihadis. The question you ask, Clarissa, and anybody that's watching this, These countries have been fighting jihadists for a very long time. What has been the contribution of ECOWAS in fighting the jihadists in those regions? Very little, if at all anything.
Of course.
If at all anything. And number three, they said they have forgotten the principles, the core principles of the founding fathers, which was regional integration. How do you install regional integration when you forget about the aspiration of the people and you are meting sanctions upon sanctions that are not in line with what the people want? Does ECOWAS, or did ECOWAS actually carry out a sensitization or understanding of why the coup took place in Mali, Burkina Faso, and the other countries? Do they understand the aspirations of the people? Do they understand why the population of those countries are behind the juntas? Or do they think that the population just don't want democracy? Are they anathemic to democracy? No, they're not. There was something behind it. And that's the reason why you saw that the population was fully behind, or is still fully behind. ECOWAS failed to see this and therefore caused the disintegration of this regional bloc, which is a tragedy. And I hope, I hope we'll see something good comes out from this instead.
That's the goal, to see that there is a positive change, especially across the political sphere of countries in Africa. I will continue in the same light, but this time around with you, Dr. Rashid, while analyzing, Dr. Elijah highlighted something very peculiar, which we are, of course, we are going to come to it subsequently. But then let's just try to understand the geopolitical stakes regarding the problems faced by the West African regional bloc, ECOWAS. We will remember that the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken once applauded Tinubu's leadership in ECOWAS pertaining the crisis in Niger and elsewhere. And we also know that they have actually been very instrumental, promising to help this regional bloc in their fight against insecurity in the region. But now when you come out to see what is happening and the different analyses that are being presented by different pundits, you hear people blaming the Russian Federation of being behind the decision taken by the leaders in these three countries, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. So what analysis can we give, or what geopolitical analysis can we give to what is actually happening in this regional sub-region, and of course, and how can Africa capitalize on this? The goal is to see that with the changing dynamics around the global world, Africa is able to position itself at the international arena. Do you see this as a way that these leaders are taking the forefront to also put Africa at the international arena by quitting this regional bloc that has been infiltrated by Western powers? Dr. Rashid?
Hello? Yes. First of all, you need to understand the general scenario of what happened.
Indeed.
Dr. Elijah has given some understanding of the true perspective of what may have caused this situation.
Sure.
But looking deeper into it, you see an ECOWAS membership unsatisfied with the leadership. You will see an ECOWAS leadership unsatisfied with the principle behind the formation of it. You will see ECOWAS itself not responding to the circumstances of the times. Economic issues are prime, and for which reason they decided that they will form an ECOWAS and take care of themselves. And yet, where countries are beginning to suffer disintegration, wars, influenced by non-state organizations, and challenging state elected people, or it becomes a problem. Then, before even coup d'etats happen, the countries are disintegrated. They feel left out. They don't have anybody to rely on. The leadership are more bent on help from the external, beyond ECOWAS. You know, for example, Mali is looking for support, or was looking for support from France. Eventually, they had to go to Russia. Burkina Faso had to go to Russia to look for support to help them fight jihadis. And it appeared as if there was no ECOWAS, when indeed ECOWAS had both military and economic, what do you call it? Power of influence.
Course. Yes.
So those powers of influence within ECOWAS began to whittle off with these countries seeking these kinds of support and not getting them. And again, you will find that one of the key things ECOWAS would succeed in doing is to be able to pull out from complete dependency of the former colonial regimes.
Sure.
So if ECOWAS is established and now finds itself being directed by these same powers, which had been the reason for which Africa had suffered for more than 100 years
Indeed.
in colonialism, then member states would not see true meaning of ECOWAS. But the essential thing is that we need to look at the people. I heard Dr. Elijah talking about the people giving support to the coup makers.
Absolutely.
I haven't seen any one African country, except perhaps the same Burkina Faso, when the people will rise against. It has always been very normal for African people to hail coup d'etats. There must be a reason for that. It doesn't show that the coup d'etats are the best options for them, but it shows that leadership have not demonstrated enough commitment to the people. And so anybody who walks in to sack a leader is a hero. So we look at the two things. Let's look at the people. How are we bringing out the people of Africa? What kind of support are we giving to our population to help them recognize the rights of people?
Absolutely.
How are we going to approach situations where, in the end, people can see their rights to be something they should defend?
Sure.
And not to applaud people who take away their mandates. So if you look at the totality of it, you realize that it's a bad thing that has happened. We want to see an ECOWAS that is formidable and reflecting its principles of operations. But if we see such a fall, which started from Mauritius, when Mauritius decided that they won't belong to ECOWAS anymore, and that reduced the number to 15. And now you have 3 members saying, look, ECOWAS is not reflecting what we want to see, so we too are going to move away.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because if ECOWAS is listening to Europe and America, ECOWAS can never be what it wants to be.
Absolutely,
because Europe and America are getting what they want. They are getting fed from our inadequacy in running our economies. They are getting fed from the poor economic policies we run. They are getting rich from the bad leadership we have. Inadequate organization of economies, failure to organize the private sector. Political power is nothing. In America, it's not political power that rules. You will see an American president being big and speaking big, but what determines his presidency is the funding of his party, and that eventually dictates what he would say.
Indeed.
Why, for example, you can ask a question, why will Biden still say, well, we are not going to condemn the bombing and the killing the Israeli is defending itself? Why will Biden be saying that? Because Biden is following the dictates of economic power that has kept him there. So economic power determines everything. Political power is not that influential. So if Africa does not project a strong economic position, which will enable countries to be on their own, and which will enable the private sector to strive and give confidence to the leadership and to the totality of ECOWAS.
Yeah.
For example, we will continue to be labels. We will continue to see support from elsewhere. You know, from every indication, when we get our support, all of them loans, grants, and etc., begging for money.
Yeah.
Now, if you beg for money from a rich man domestically, you are better off because you dictate to you domestically.
Yeah.
But if you beg for money from the external, the whole of your people can be enslaved, and then you will not be able to cough. So if we are getting too deep into being enslaved, you have military people who are leading and who are coming out to say, look, I don't want to belong to a situation where somebody sits in America, takes a phone call, and then everybody is following.
Because they need to defend the sovereignty of state, yeah.
Yes, your sovereignty is undermined.
Sure.
The France can still call any of his former colonies and say, don't do this. And they won't do it.
And they won't do it.
And then they will applaud the leadership of ECOWAS. If America begins applauding them, just know that there's something wrong. America is America because it follows its policies. It doesn't have a friend. It's a common saying. Why does America not have friends? Because if you don't follow your friendship doesn't reflect their expectations, their ideals about life, their national, you can't be a friend to America.
Okay.
So if we are reflecting what America wants, it means we are somehow not reflecting exactly what the totality of the people want. So not just America, I mean all of us. I'm pro-Africa. It doesn't matter what happens. I'm pro-Africa, I'm pro-independence, I'm pro-anti-apartheid, I'm pro anything that will destroy the confidence and ability of the African.
And that's why we are here today to bring this discursive analysis into the happenings around the African continent. The goal is to see that we should capitalize on what is happening and, of course, take the positive aspect of it for the betterment of the continent Africa, looking at the effect, the consequences of what is happening around the global world, particularly in Africa. You talked about the economic priorities of a country being the motto or the engine that can herald a country. Coming to you, Dr. Elijah ENOAKU, let's accentuate on this aspect because, you know, from the launch of the Continental Free Trade Area, you can notice that the African continent has witnessed a lot of crises. And then when we are trying to analyze deeper the happenings, we are tempted to say that it has actually been seen as a ploy to derail this economic flagship. We are talking here about the African Continental Free Trade Area. Do you think maybe Africa that is disintegrated can be able to form this very buoyant and giant economic zone that will facelift the economies of African countries, giving them some level of economic progress, not just in Africa, but in the global world?
Clarice, let me answer your question in two dimensions. I want to be positive and also want to give you the negative part of it. The positive part of some of these things that we are talking here is when you find countries that seems to realize the problems that we are facing in Africa, like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, because some of the things that they are doing now, they are actually digging out some of the things that are ailing Africa. Because recently we heard about them saying that they are eyeing a political and a monetary alliance. So it's not just a political alliance, they're eyeing a monetary alliance, which tells you that they are pushing to get out of the French CFA, which is something a lot of Africans, every single one, even a newborn, is really crying and asking the question, what the heck is happening in Africa that we are having a currency that is not ours? Political independence without economic independence, you are still under a colony.
Indeed.
That is just as simple as that. You can be given any peanuts and say you are a country, giving a name and whatnot. As long as you are still economically dependent, you are still a colony. So if we are seeing these countries coming out with some ideas and plans and programs on how they can actually dump this so-called colonial currency, that's the positive. It's coming out of this. And then we also heard about them forming a federation.
Okay.
We heard that Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, they're trying to form a federation. And in answer to your question, when they form a federation, that's a positive when it comes to the African Free Trade Zone. That's a positive, which some other countries have been dragging their feet on all this while. They said African Free Trade Zone has been on paper. To live from one country to the other, you need a visa. To do this, do business, you need this, you need that. It's not flowing. So a positive here is that these countries seem to be showing the way for the rest of the African countries, even though they are juntas. So the question now comes, Clarice, is if it is going to take a junta to do what a democrat in a democracy could do, does it mean that that junta is working against the interests of the people or for the interests of the people?
And that's the
That's why I was talking right from the beginning, that Ecowas is missing a mark here. If you have a junta that's working towards the aspiration of the people, give them time.
Indeed.
It's not all about an elected leader. It's not all about democracy. Yeah, we all want democracy. We don't want coup d'etats all over Africa. But you have somebody there who is working according to the aspiration of the people. Give him time. Ecowas has missed that. Then in terms of the free trade zone that you asked, if you look at the Sahel, it's a large geographically dispersed area. Those countries, 15 countries, very dispersed, especially Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, very large. And in terms of regional integration and the free trade zone that we've been talking about, Nigeria, which is the economic juggernaut in that region, has not yet even started the implementation of the 7 preambles of the free trade zone that were agreed in the Abuja Accord. They have not started implementing that. But Nigeria is the first country to take the knife and the yam and the gun and go hard on Mali and go hard on Burkina Faso and go hard on Niger just because there's a military junta. So you see that even from an economic perspective, those countries that were trying to talk about the economic free zone and say they could foster it are not doing what they were supposed to do. Instead, the junta, with what they are doing, if they have to follow through what we see, are actually the one trying to implement policies that are in line with African Free Trade Zone. Not only that, if you look at the ECO that you talked about at the beginning of your program, that they discussed and said they are going to replace the France CFA with an ECO and all whatnot. Who are those who went behind to jeopardize that plan? Is the same Ivory Coast, which has been fostering and pushing for these sanctions, pushing with the help or with Western powers manipulating them, pushing for sanctions against Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. They are the one that went behind and destroyed the whole ECO plan. And everything become messed up. And today we don't have anything. So to answer your question, there is a silver lining in on all this. Sometimes when there's chaos, something good can come out of that chaos. Yes, there's chaos right now because there's disintegration. Ecowas is in a mess. They don't know what they're doing. But if Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger could force the hand of Ecowas to rethink, to understand that the route they are taking is not according to the founding principles of ECOWAS. First and foremost, one of the founding principles of ECOWAS was non-integration, aggression. So by carrying out or planning to even attack Niger and Burkina Faso and all these countries because of what happened in the country was actually going against the principles of ECOWAS that says non-aggression. Because that was aggressing a sovereign country. They have the right to do whatever they're doing in their countries.
Sure.
So, again, the silver lining, the good part here is that ECOWAS, these 3 countries can actually force the hand of ECOWAS to rethink their policy. They can actually force Western powers to know that Africa can take their own hands, take things into the control of their countries into their hands. They don't need to depend on Western powers. As I said at the beginning of the program, what has been the contribution of ECOWAS to the fighting of jihadis that these 3 countries have been struggling with?
Sure.
Zero. So you see that in a nutshell, ECOWAS has not been doing what they were founded to do. especially for these three countries. And these three countries deciding to do this, again, on the negative side, is not good, because we want integration in Africa. We don't want disintegration. We want a conglomeration. We want Africa to be united. We want a situation where the free trade zone can actually, it will be borderless in some sense. I don't mean a porous border. I just mean you can trade, you can go from one country and do business. There's going to be harmonization of the customs, trade. There's going to be harmonization of the economic agenda of those countries, so that business can flow with those countries. But that is the negative side. But the positive side, as I said, is these countries can actually force ECOWAS to change and do the right thing and follow the preamble of the founding fathers. So there's negatives and there are positives on both sides.
Absolutely, Dr. Elijah ENOAKU. The three countries have taken the lead, of course, defending Africa. If we want to go by the mantra, African solutions to African problems, I think the revolution is similarly a positive one. Let's understand this particular aspects with you, Dr. Honorable Dr. Rashid. We are looking at instability, security challenges rocking the Sahel region, and of course the recent the countries that have announced their pullout from the regional bloc. They have actually succumbed to this aspect of insecurity. Now we are talking about multilateralism. All of this is happening in the era of multilateralism. We cannot deny the fact that the African continent has attracted more and more people, as we can see from the number of global powers making themselves heard in Africa. But then we want to look at how Africa can use the aspect of multilateralism. People always present the positive and the negative aspect of it, but then let's capitalize on the constructive aspect of multilateralism. Faced with this insecurity, faced with the political impasse, what do you think are the right parameters to be adopted, not only by the regional bloc ECOWAS, but also other stakeholders across the African continent to capitalize on this multilateralism? And of course, we're talking about a new world order, and multilateralism actually comes in when we mention that. So what is the place or the role of African countries or stakeholders, especially political leaders, to capitalize on this aspect for the benefit of Africa?
Well, first of all, we need to understand that in what they call national interests, every country that engages in a bilateral relation with another is seeking to benefit more than the country they are dealing with. In the multilateral world, countries control the main functional duty of a multilateral organization. States are the ones that contribute more to it. And these states then dictate what the others will have to benefit from. Nobody will sponsor a multilateral organization like the IMF or the World Bank and then sits back and not benefit out of it. So it's important that African countries, united in their purpose, will define exactly what we want to gain out of it. And when you go into any kind of multilateral organization, you are going there believing that you are going to benefit more than the people you are going to meet there. Now, if you cannot define such, and you don't have any such principle that operates in your life, then it becomes a problem. You go into IMF and you be dictated to. You go to the World Bank, you be dictated to. You go to any organization, world organization, human rights organizations, and anything that relations that you find to have some relation with, you go there without any definition of what you want and what your national interest is. You go there and you lose. Now, it's important that we stay back, rethink, do a soul search, understand what we want, and go along with that. I have a lot of pain that in all these military leaders emerging, we haven't had enough solid diplomatic missions, diplomatic arrangements that could have prevented what has happened. It's important that democracy goes along with understanding and cooperation. But it's also key that where there are challenges, which are normal, you can't have any organization, any country without due challenges facing the people. You will have to define a way of solving that problem. I haven't seen how much solid impressions leadership has made in tackling the challenges facing these countries, which has resulted in coup d'etats happening.
Sure.
Now, first of all, if you want to find out why there are coup d'etats, re-examine how leadership emerges in these areas, how they handle the economy of the areas,
absolutely,
how they approach the rest of the people. If they are conscious about the development of the people, respect the people, use the resources of the nation to develop the people, it is not normal for anybody to look at all this and still come out and say you want to do a coup d'etat. If ECOWAS, as a global, as a regional bloc, will allow people's rights to be abused in various countries, will allow high-level corruption to happen in countries, and the suffering of the people becomes so real that on streets you see people begging, and you see people running across, trying to use the sea to cross to Europe and dying with a lot of ignominy, disrespect, and dishonor. Then you come back home. If you are unable to do that, any military adventure that tries to tackle the status quo will be supported by the people, because the people themselves, the leadership itself, is not responding, or having been responding adequately to the wish of the people. So I think that very importantly, in order to be a multilateral organized, if you go into a multilateral organizations and benefit out of it, you must move along with your people. You must recognize the will of your people that has made you who you are, and then work along that direction. You must place the interest of the people first in everything we do. If ECOWAS cannot give confidence to individual states to be able to go home, believing that if I'm in trouble, there's a bigger brother somewhere which will come to help me, then there's a problem. So I think that ECOWAS, it's time for ECOWAS to do more research into itself, to do some monitoring, some evaluation of itself, and then come out solidly with functional duties that can let it reflect the times that we are coming through. Let the peer review mechanism still operate. Let ECOWAS people, let that instrument of peer mechanism work in each country. It doesn't matter whether it's Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, or any other place. Let it work in other countries, so that when something that is largely disrespecting the principle of democracy upon which you come to power is violated, you can be advised. And let them have a yearly meeting, so that at the end of the year, each country will be told to its face the failures of the country, what they are doing, because the peer mechanism is not managed by politicians. It's managed by technocrats who look into your face. If you do something wrong, they can write and say, look, you have done this wrong. So that when ECOWAS meets, they can examine themselves, they can see their failures, they can begin to correct, rather than wait until military adventurers comes to power with anger and then seize the will of the people and get them, supporting them and in a manner that is self-reproaching to the consciousness of the African. We are worried about what ECOWAS is going through right now, because ECOWAS reflects a key collective economic power of Africa. It has a strong economic power in Africa. In fact, Nigeria is leading Africa in economic, in GDP. It has more economic influence than any other African country. The challenge Nigeria is facing is unbound corruption and failure to utilize the resources it has to deal with the key challenges that people are facing. If you want to look at the poorest people in Africa, you can find majority in Nigeria. If you want to get the richest people in Africa, you can find them in Nigeria. There has to be an understanding. There have to be a situation where Nigeria can work out how it can use the wealth it has to influence the people of Nigeria and bring it to have a greater influence in the Ecowas. And Ghana is one other country where we can use some aspects of our policies, to improve the lives of our people and to use them as best practices for other countries. Generally in Africa, we have not passed the test, and ECOWAS as a group appears to be failing the test. I haven't seen one ECOWAS country that doesn't go, asking for help from other countries, that is capable of managing its own affairs, that is capable of reflecting the will of the people adequately, and showing commitment to economic development. So if we are there as a tool to be used by other countries, then these coups are only just the beginning, and many more are going to happen. Young people are rising up. They are very dissatisfied about what is happening in Africa. They are unhappy with the arrangements being made to run their lives. They are unemployed. They want to live like others in the world. They are not getting that opportunity. And if we can't make it available for them, then the possibility is that more and more countries will rise against their leadership. And when they do so, they rise against the outer boundaries of control, which is ECOWAS and which is the West or the East or any other persons. And, we have to begin a journey to mean Africa is beginning again. After all the struggles we went through, after all the liberation wars we fought, we would have then been fighting another one within. Because no country is going to wait for us. No country is going to say, oh, Africa is behind us, let's wait for them. No. And nobody. We owe our existence to nobody. It must be Africa itself. So ECOWAS must recognize this and be a champion in Africa, in the regional branch, in the regional groupings, to change the life of these people, to stand as a solid background to the leadership of the other African countries, so that they can see it as a bulwark, where they can lean on when they are in trouble.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. RASHIED. Sorry to interject. I know that you still have a lot to say as far as this topic is concerned, but we are going to come subsequently to that in our pending programs. I think we are going to round off just 1 minute with you, Dr. ENOAKU, regarding our topic for discussions. We have seen that the rhetorics put forth by ECOWAS have actually helped to and to bring this integration in a regional bloc that was once revered and remained a flagship bloc in Africa. But then today we are seeing it different with this new revolution that is coming from Africa. So what is the take-home package as we culminate this first edition of the program Global Insights?
The take-home message here, Clarice, to be very quick, is that Africa has what it takes to take its destiny into its hands.
Indeed.
When Zimbabwe was sanctioned by the West because they decided to do a land policy, they decided to say, we are going east, and they decided a China policy. And we see the outcome of it today, even though the West is gradually coming along. Now that sanctions have been placed on Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, they have decided to go east as well. And they're now dealing with Russia and these other countries. And the West is gradually, in a way, trying to woo them back. So whatever it is going to take to get the independence of Africa, Africa should go for it. I am not advocating here for military juntas. I'm not advocating for takeovers. But as long as the aspiration of the people is being met, and these people are in line with what all Pan-Africanists desire, the complete independence of Africa, not political independence without economic independence, complete independence of Africa, both political and economic, I think Africa will be in the right direction. So again, that's the silver lining of what's happening there. But the unfortunate thing is that it's disintegration, it's not integration. Yeah. We want integration in Africa. So if Ecowas and all the other regional leaders can look at what they're doing wrong and look into the complaints of members, I think we'll be on the good footing.
And that is the goal, that we should bring Africa together. And Dr. Elijah ENOAKU, I think the whole continent is actually optimistic about this revolution, because it seems it's a positive wind of change that is blowing across every sphere, especially the political sphere of continent Africa, and most importantly, the involvement of the young people wanting to be in the political life of their various countries, to change the narratives around as we are in a world of a new world order where dynamics are changing. And I will reiterate the words of the African Union Commission Chair Musa Faki Mahamat, who once said that, of course, Africa is aware of the high level of multilateralism on the continent in the present moment, but then it will be unwise for the continent to not make good use of the fact that this aspect of multilateralism has brought the continent to the fore, and there is need to redefine Africa's perspective, especially at the global arena. And that is how we are going to end today's edition of Global Insight on For You Media Africa. But then we want to thank you so much, Dr. Elijah ENOAKU, the Director of Center for Africa Development, and also Honorable Dr. RASHIED PELPUO, ex-Ghanaian Minister of State, who doubles as MP for World Central and currently President of the African Parliamentarian Forum on Population and Development. I thank you immensely for the great and constructive insight as we discuss our topic today regarding the changing dynamics surrounding Ecowas and looking at the present stakes after Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso announced their pullout. For those of you trusting the Pan-African Television For You Media, keep being with us. Let's make Africa great, and see you some other time. Bye-bye.